Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Politics Corner, in which we're going to be looking at charismatic authority, which is one of the three types of authority that Max Weber mentioned in his classification of authority. Now remember what authority is. Authority is the right to rule and the right to have your decisions accepted by the governed, that they consent to it. Now, charismatic authority is fascinating because it's all based upon personality. It's all based upon the emotional connection that a leader is able to meet with the governed. You have probably experienced charismatic politicians in your lifetime, and history is littered with them. You've probably had that tingle go up your spine, for example, when you've seen Barack Obama make a major speech. He had charismatic authority in abundance. One of his predecessors, Bill Clinton, had charismatic authority. People used to leave a room when they'd been in a meeting with Bill Clinton and say, yeah, he was talking directly to me. Tony Blair had it in abundance. They used to refer to him as Teflon Tony because whatever happened in negative terms to his government, it didn't stick. He was non-stick. I have an acquaintance who has met political leaders through his work, political leaders from all over the world, and he said that he'd never met anybody able to work a room like Tony Blair. And it's this emotional connection which most politicians would give their right arm for. I mean, it's a bit like style. You either got it or you haven't got it. And if you look at someone like Gordon Brown, for example, he just didn't have the charisma required to make a connection with the voter. He was a bit like King Midas in reverse. King Midas, everything he touched turned to gold. For poor old Gordon Brown, it went the opposite way. Even someone like Boris Johnson, love him or hate him, the fact is a lot of people love him based on this sort of cheeky personality that he has. And I suppose a lot of it is sensing the needs of the governed and being able to sense the mood. One of the things that we see, for example, is that charismatic politicians will sometimes present themselves as the champion of the governed. We sometimes refer to it as populism, and the most blatant example of that in current times is Donald Trump. He is connecting with a large voter base. He is looking at their problems. He is blaming their problems on other people, and he is saying that he will, if you like, restore them to greatness. And that's where the whole Make America Great Again slogan comes from. And if you've seen a Donald Trump rally, I mean, the people that are there, it's like he is the Messiah. They cheer, they holler, that connection, they believe. People used to say a similar thing about Adolf Hitler. I mean, I've seen interviews with elderly men who were in the Hitler Youth, and they start crying when they talk about Adolf Hitler. And despite decades of evidence that this was one of the most heinous regimes in history, they will not have a bad word said against them. So you can whip up a sort of charisma among people. You can also manufacture it through propaganda. Benito Mussolini, who was dictator of Italy for over 20 years in the 20s and 30s, had this amazing propaganda machine and built up what was called the cult of personality, whereby you establish an image of yourself among the people. And his was of a man of action. He used to have a slogan at the head of each newspaper that said, "Mussolini is always right." He vastly relied on slogans, a bit like Boris. His famous one being "Credere, obbedire, combattere," which meant believe, obey, fight. Sorry if I frightened you there. Places like North Korea. We talked in an earlier episode about how there's a lot of traditional authority there, but there's also this manufactured charisma through massive indoctrination and propaganda. They actually believe that their leaders are superhuman, that they have godlike qualities. True story that when the original leader of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, died, that during the funeral procession, there were dozens of suicides along the roadside because people felt that they just couldn't live without him. So it's this amazing force of personality, this, whether it's manufactured, whether it's natural, where people just want to go along with you. I mean, we mentioned Boris Johnson. There's been a shambles over the handling of the coronavirus epidemic. And yet, if you look at the polls, people are still pro Boris Johnson because they connect with him. And that connection, that emotional connection, whether it's just through personality, whether it's through hoping to restore people's faith again, as in Donald Trump, or whether it's manufactured, that's what we refer to as charismatic authority, and the people will go along with you. Just to get back to Adolf Hitler, Andrew Marr has this amazing description of Adolf Hitler and the rise to power of Hitler, and he describes it as the revenge of the loser. And again, if you look at the people that Hitler appealed to, people who felt they'd lost out, people who felt that someone else was to blame, and people who wanted to feel good about themselves again. And he promised that in many of the same ways that Donald Trump is looking at white, blue-collar America who have no jobs, who have no economic prospects, whose lives are a lot tougher than they used to be. And whilst it might be false hope, it's that connection that he's given. He is their champion. And that's how they see it. No policy details, no examining of the economics, no examining of the issues. It's the emotional connection. So that's charismatic authority, all based upon the personality and the connection that exists between the leader and the governed. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe.